This is a review for week 7 of the beginner series in March of 2023. The big news this week was the concept and practice of Vinyasa. Vinyasa is a Sanskrit word composed of the roots meaning to cut and to place. And in the context of this particular lineage of Ashtanga Yoga, we use this to describe ways of putting actions together methodologically to have a particular effect on the consciousness. So really, vinyasa is an animating concept for everything that we've done so far in nearly 2 months. The understanding of the purpose and sequencing of Surya Namaskara, fundamental asanas, closing and rest, and the decision of whether you're going to engage in the particular intentions and practices that are under the umbrella of the primary series, which is designed in a certain way to have certain effects on the consciousness and on the digestion, particularly in your body-mind system. So within this broader context of an understanding of the methodological design and sequencing that has purpose to bring about certain transformations in the consciousness, taking a vinyasa is a set of concatenated actions that we do once we get to the floor work of the primary series that is integrated into the purpose of the primary series, but is also super, super technical. So we're probably going to circle around to this material again further down the road. But for now, I'll just remind you that the way that we learned this action of separating different postures that you're doing on the floor has the intention of sustaining your concentration and the brightness and the clarity of the fire element in your practice. It also develops so much strength. And as I mentioned, I would not bother to teach something that is so hard if it didn't really integrate with the bigger picture of the kind of stability, intrinsic strength, and mobility that we are going to need to have a body for the long term of our life. The thing that very often puts a person in the nursing home later in life is if you are not able to mobilize up and down out of chairs, and particularly if you have a fall from the floor. So the intrinsic strength and the work with every single joint in the body, the vinyasa, the taking of a vinyasa, requires and gets into our system. I've witnessed this myself over the working with people in lots of different situations in life. That combination of strength and mobility really relates as it links actions that you're taking from a seated position. It really relates with this other lifestyle thing that has to do with our mobility in life, particularly getting up and down from the floor. The actions of the taking the vinyasa look a lot like what a lot of Olympic level athletes might call body weight exercise, and indeed they are. But there is a strange new folk theory in the Western yoga world that these actions are actually taken from gymnastics, and that requires a profound ignorance of the life and history of South India. In the south of India, there's a very, very old martial arts practice known as Kalari Pitu. And if you ever have the amazing opportunity to observe that gorgeous, old martial arts in action, you will recognize the movements that you start learning today of taking a vinyasa in the simple sense, as a way of moving your body weight up and off and back on to the ground. So there's much more to say in that regard. It's wonderful, wonderful rabbit hole in the whole method, and a big one to introduce today, and you all did great. going forward, for now, there was a question of how do you learn the floor postures? Are we going to do those in the context of a workshop, or what's next? And that's a great question. I can't believe I didn't even bother to bring it up. It really has to do with these questions we were having today about how much gas you have in the tank, not just physically, but emotionally and cognitively, to sustain your practice for not just a particular day, but in the long run. So that's a conversation to have with me in the Mysore style context when we figure out, like, how long should your practice be? How much mental, emotional, and physical capacity is there, and how should we design your practice such that it's consistently giving more energy than it takes? So it's not just a matter of physical ability, we can work with the physical postures and adapt them to really any body. It really also is about the longevity and the sustained sense of having a sadhana or having a practice that's consistent. Just come to class. We'll figure it out. Yoga is a science. It's also art. It's also a profound path of the mystical. But in its scientific aspect, the refrain of noticing the effects is a way of orienting towards the data that's coming to you mindfully in the practice. So today we ended with a guided meditation having to do with noticing the effects on all layers this particular yoga philosophy says that we contain. But more importantly, the practice of noticing the effects as science actually enables us to have a patient, non-analytical relationship with our experience. As a scientist, you gather vectors of data in a consistent manner over a period of time and withdraw from and have the restraint to not engage in analysis in a compulsive way or too frequently or too early in that scientific process. I really like periods of 1 to 3 months or 1 year to sort of offer a treatment or run an experiment where then at the end of that period you notice the effects. But also, even within the context of a daily practice, at the end of the practice, taking a moment, always returning to samastitihi at the end and noticing the effects and taking a moment to say thank you, however that might be. Today I noted that I find it's just such a miracle that these profound, in some cases ancient, and really very far away originating practices are here in our particular moment in socioeconomy. Are like, how amazing that is, and how lucky we are to be able to engage at this level with these techniques. Like, that for me is an uninterrupted source of profound gratitude, that remembering that at the end of my practice every day really brings up brightness and helps me keep things real in my own relationship with these beautiful, brilliant methodologies. In any case, that moment of noticing and hopefully sort of giving the merit or some sort of blessing around the practice at the end has everything to do with what we talked about the first week of sort of beginning and ending the practice with similar levels of awareness and having a kind of an arc structure of the design of the practice. This too is vinyasa. So the scientific aspect of noticing the effects is just a moment at the end of the practice to be like, oh, what are the way that I engage today, the specifics of what I did, like just noticing the effects after the practice. And again, on the rest of your day too. So according to particular philosophical tradition within the yoga practice, the human is made up of 5 layers. This is called the Pancha Kosha model, or the Pancha Maya model. And the way that I suggest noticing the effects is actually to start with just the first level of the human, which is your physical, and notice the effects of the physical practice of the yoga on your physical body. And this is where, to this day, I've not ever regretted doing it. And that is also just 1/5 of who we are according to this philosophy. The second level is what's called your pranamaya kosha, which is the energy / emotions. And so that's usually pretty dramatic. The underlying design of the Ashtanga method is really very often driven by an energy rationale, an energy-based rationale. You can always be like, what's the energetic effect of this design? If you want to understand why it's put together the way it is, it's almost always because of how it's going to condition your energy. And so that's the second layer, the second sheath of the human. The third one is your manomaya kosha. That's your thinking mind, the sort of cognitive thinking mind that in the Western idea that lives here or something. In the yoga philosophy, it's 3-dimensional. It's almost, you could say, a theory of embodied cognition in a way, but thinking is something that happens in a not just is performed by a little person in the inside of your brain, right? Thinking is still a dimensional experience. The fourth layer is what's called the wisdom body, or the sheath of the Vinyasa is what it's called. And this is, I'm careful to distinguish this from the Western concept. It comes from Freud, right, of the unconscious mind. If anything, the Vinyasa kosha it's still intuitively available to us. The concept is, because most of us do have a sense that there's a mind behind the mind, whether or not we think of that as the unconscious. There's also, perhaps a super consciousness or a higher consciousness. I'm just going to call it the wisdom body. And at the end of the practice, to stop and check in and say, am I in touch with my wisdom, with my intuitions, is one way of kind of bringing that online, so that your sense of what thinking is, of what mind is not just about the velocity and content of cognitive thoughts. There's other forms of, quote, thinking that the yoga includes. So there's that. The Vinyasa kosha also contains the negative pattern behaviors and the unconscious beliefs that the practice itself can begin to surface and transform in its own time. So much of what you've been sharing in the group discussions too is really about your previously not conscious patterning and the way that that's becoming available to you, and as such, when that comes online and you notice through noticing the effects of the practice, you notice the conditioning. It's in that moment that you have a whole lot more space to make conscious decisions. The last layer, which potentially says you don't have to believe in any sort of, this is not, yoga is not cosmology, right? So you don't have to believe in any sort of a god or any sort of a higher power or whatever to do this practice. And at the same time, in this particular philosophy, there is the idea that a human being has an inner light. And that might even be quite literally true. There are moments, for example, at the moment of conception, there's some sort of a chemical phosphorus effect where there's light exchanged or generated on a cellular level. So who knows? Like maybe the origin of this philosophy isn't really abstract at all, right? In any sense, the inner idea here is that there's something beyond mind that is an animating light that everyone has, but that can become obscured because there are both superficial and deep misalignments in the way that we relate with time and space. So, for example, if the thinking mind is in a different place from the physical body, and the emotions are in a different place still, in time or space, then the yoga is there, theoretically, as almost a sort of centripetal force that brings us, the many layers of us, together in time and space, such that we can experience moments of alignment where the metaphor here might be that the inner light kind of becomes integrated and can shine through in those moments when all of the other layers, the physical, the energy, the thinking mind, and the deep mind, are as one. So that's a very long way to notice the effects at the end of the practice. There's also a mantra that I can teach you if you want, that I do say at the end of the practice, which is a sort of prayer for peace and a sense of blessing to the world around you. In any case, just make sure that both the beginning and the end of the practice have equal amounts of intentionality, that you're investing in this, because this is ritual. Vinyasa is ritualized conditioning of the consciousness to bring about new states in the whole mind-body system. Finally, everybody talked, and the thing that I shared was that as relates to my work, there are 4 deeply held values that if you're ever wondering, like, what's Angela going to do, or why is she doing things this way, which is maybe not usual in the yoga space, right? Knowing what those deeply held values are will usually answer those questions. So there's 4. It's RELD: relationship, expertise, longevity, and depth of understanding. Those aren't just for me. I'm encouraging RELD as a element of the culture around the school that we have, and also as I'm working within relationship, those are always present in the way that I work. I want to try to presence that value of depth of understanding and of longevity of practice and commitment to knowing, right? And really of the development of the expertise and looking towards expertise as a mode of understanding. And of course, as you know from week 1, yoga is relationship. So this is also why going forward, there are so many forces in this world that are always trying to push me into certain ways of doing my work that don't necessarily do anything for relationship, expertise, longevity, and depth of understanding. And so I'm always resisting, and it is not easy. The forces of becoming a yoga studio, for example. If I'm just a yoga boss who's creating an empire and making all the decisions about programming and traveling all the time, that is not likely. Having been deep in the belly of that beast for 10 years before I even started teaching, and also having done my graduate work in economic sociology, what I have found is that certain of those institutional structures, while I don't particularly have a beef with them, are not taking me in the direction of my most deeply held values around my work. So if you want to stick around here, for the Shala in particular, I want the people who are there to have a sense of stewardship about the place, not a sense of consumerism, or being there for a 90-minute unit of service, right? But rather emotional investment in its existence, right? And a knowledge that is not me. That is an institution that has its own being in the world. That if you're around, I want you to actually care and feel like you are taking actions to be a part of it, right? So yeah, going forward, if you want to, I'm definitely deeply invested in each of you. And so if you want to continue to be a part of that entity that is the Shala, show up and bring your energy and support the place in a way that actually helps you not just contribute, but also want it to be healthy and want it to have longevity, right? So this has been wonderful so far. It's been great to just have time to hang out in a really post-pandemic moment when there's a bit more relaxation for all of us. And I'm very grateful for the time that we've had and think that we'll have more in different ways. So thank you so far, and see you soon.